So what if I told you that um, a toddler screaming on the floor of a grocery store isn't actually throwing a tantrum?
Right. Like it's not what we think it is at all.
Yeah, what if in that exact moment,
Yeah.
that child is literally like biologically trapped inside their own nervous system,
Uh-huh.
just fighting this neurological alarm bell that they simply do not have the hardware to turn off yet?
I mean, it completely dismantles the way we've been conditioned to view misbehavior. You
Yeah.
stop seeing this behavioral problem or like a lack of discipline, and you
Exactly.
start seeing a physiological crisis. It sort of forces you to respond to the biology rather than, reacting to the noise.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. Welcome in, everyone. We are looking at this truly fascinating crowdfunding campaign by a group called SDJ Production.
Yeah, it's a really unique project.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to explore how this specific project is doing something quite rare. They are taking incredibly dense, complex academic neuroscience, and they're translating it into a practical, accessible survival kit for parents and caregivers.
Because the gap between what researchers know about neurobiology in the lab
Yeah.
and what a stressed out parent is actually able to deploy in their living room is massive.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
I mean, SDJ Production is essentially trying to build a bridge over that gap, right? And they are doing it with some incredibly rigorous science.
It's funny because I used to think dealing with a massive childhood meltdown was essentially like trying to defuse a complex bomb in the dark.
Right. That's how it feels.
That's totally how it feels. But going through the research they've compiled, I realized that analogy entirely misses the mark. It's actually much more like trying to run high-speed internet into a building where the drywall isn't even up yet.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like the hardware simply isn't there to process the signal you are trying to send.
That is a highly accurate way to conceptualize it. You can send all the data you want, like all the logic, all the demands for them to calm down. But if the biological wiring hasn't been laid down yet, or if the power to that part of the building has been, temporarily cut off,
You're just going to get an error message.
every single time, an error message.
So to stop those error messages,
Yeah.
we have to look at the foundational premise of the SDJ project. They're basically arguing for a massive paradigm shift here.
Yeah, they are.
The core of their philosophy is that these difficult behaviors, the crying, the absolute refusal to move, the throwing of objects, they are not caprices.
Right. They aren't whims.
Yeah, they aren't calculated manipulations. They are the literal language of a brain that is still under construction.
And that forces a total reframing of the dynamic. You are no longer looking at an adversary in a battle of wills. You are looking at an active construction zone.
Okay, let's unpack this because I have to push back here just a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
It's incredibly easy to sit in a calm studio and talk about, biological construction zones. But biology is also a very convenient excuse sometimes.
I hear what you're saying.
Like when a child looks you dead in the eye, gives a little smirk, and slowly pushes a full glass of water off the edge of the coffee table.
The classic water glass test.
Exactly. That requires logic. That is calculated testing of a boundary.
Yeah.
How can you look at that and claim it's just a biological overwhelm?
Well, it's a vital distinction to make, and it's where we have to separate executive function testing from a true nervous system meltdown. What
Wow.
you just described, the water glass experiment, is a child acting as a clumsy scientist. They are testing cause and effect,
I
right?
want to see what happened.
Exactly. That is an upstairs behavior. But what the SDJ project is targeting are the downstairs behaviors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the moments of total emotional dysregulation where the child is no longer calculating anything. They're simply drowning in stress hormones.
Which brings us directly to the three-story brain model they use in the kit, right? Famously developed by clinical psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Siegel.
Yes, exactly. Siegel's work is foundational here.
Assuming most of you listening are familiar with basic brain anatomy, we know the neocortex, like the top floor of this metaphorical house, handles our executive function.
Right. That's your logic, empathy, impulse control.
Exactly. And then the limbic system, the second floor, processes raw emotion and memory. And the ground floor, or the basement, is the brainstem, which handles pure survival, fight, flight, or freeze.
And the critical insight SDJ pulls from Siegel isn't just that the top floor exists, but how a child's brain actually accesses it.
Right.
In a healthy adult, you have these well-worn, sturdy staircases connecting these floors. When you get frustrated, your neocortex can send signals down to the limbic system to, regulate your anger.
You can talk yourself down, but with a child, those staircases are literally under construction.
Yes. And more importantly, when a child experiences intense stress, cortisol and adrenaline just flood their system.
Right.
Those chemicals act like a literal barricade on the stairs. So when a child is overwhelmed, they are locked in the basement or the second floor. They cannot access logic because the biological pathways to the neocortex are temporarily shut down.
That makes perfect sense. You're standing there demanding they act reasonably, basically shouting instructions up to the third floor, but the child is trapped in the basement and the stairs are barricaded.
Exactly. They can't hear you.
But if the physical reality is that they are locked in the basement, how does the rest of the science in this kit fit in? Because they also mention Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory and John Gottman's work.
Right, so they fit together like puzzle pieces. Porges's polyvagal theory explains a mechanism called neuroception.
Neuroception.
Okay, basically our nervous system is constantly, subconsciously scanning our environment for safety or threat.
Like a radar.
Exactly. And to a young child whose reference for the world is very small, a seemingly minor disappointment, like not getting the blue cup, can trigger a literal biological threat response.
Oh, wow.
Their nervous system signals danger, and they are instantly dropped into the basement.
Wait, really? So to them, not getting the blue cup feels biologically identical to being chased by a predator?
Precisely. The body doesn't know the difference. And this is where John Gottman's work on emotional validation becomes the key to unlocking the stairwell.
Okay, how so?
Gottman's research centers on emotion coaching. It's the practice of acknowledging and validating the underlying emotion, rather than just dismissing it.
Let me make sure I have this right. Dismissing it would be saying, stop crying. It's just a cup. You're fine.
Right, which is what we usually do.
Right, which, based on polyvagal theory, probably signals to the child's nervous system that the adult doesn't understand the threat, which only increases their panic.
You've hit the nail on the head. The panic increases because they feel unsafe. But emotional validation, saying something like, I see you are really furious that you can't have the blue cup. It makes sense that you're mad. That literal verbal validation does something profound.
It tells them you see the threat too.
Yes, it signals safety to the child's neuroception. It physically begins to lower the child's heart rate. It stops the flood of cortisol.
You are systematically dismantling the barricade on the stairs.
Yes, you're clearing the way. But as you noted earlier, it is one thing to know about the three-story brain and emotional validation in the abstract, you know?
Yeah.
It's entirely different to deploy it when you are under fire.
Exactly. If the biological reality is that we need to act as their emotional scaffolding, how do we actually do that in the moment?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because when you are in aisle 4 of the grocery store and the meltdown is escalating, you can't just pull out a neuroscience textbook.
No, you definitely cannot.
You're stressed, people are staring, and your own cortisol is spiking.
Yeah.
If you aren't careful, you just end up in your own basement.
Which is exactly why the implementation of this knowledge is the entire focus of the SDJ campaign. They aren't trying to publish, another academic paper.
Right.
They are trying to fund an interactive toolkit engineered specifically to bypass the parent's cognitive overload in those high-stress moments.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the actual user experience, like the UX of this kit, is incredibly smart. It's highly multimodal.
Yeah, they thought of everything.
First, they include the Artstole Guide, which is a video format, an MP4, and the intent there is to visually bridge the theory we just discussed with practical application.
Because seeing someone else physically model a calm intervention is crucial for mirror neuron learning.
Visual repetition is often the only way new behaviors stick when we are under stress, right?
Absolutely.
But the piece that stands out the most to me is the Child's Emotions Interactive HTML Guide.
Oh, that tool is brilliant.
Think about the utility of this. It's a living digital tool designed for phones or computers. You could literally be in that grocery store, hide behind a display of cereal boxes, pull this up on your phone, and have an immediate, actionable flowchart.
Yes. It removes the need for you to try and remember complex psychological theories when your own brain is panicking.
It just tells you what to do.
It reduces the cognitive load on the caregiver to near zero. It tells you exactly what to do next. But the real heavy lifting of the toolkit happens in the visual and PDF tools they've developed.
Right, the sources detailed too in particular.
Yeah, the survival guide to negative feelings and the emotional blueprint.
The survival guide acts as sort of a step-by-step manual for navigating those intense emotions. It's designed to hold the parent's hand while the parent holds the child's hand.
Which parents desperately need.
But the emotional blueprint is where we see the actual operational mechanics of the science. It takes the abstract concept of Siegel's three-story brain and gives parents a visual map.
Yes.
And specifically, it introduces the primary intervention mechanism,
Mm,
the 3R protocol.
right. The 3R protocol is the sequence that finally gets the child out of the basement.
Okay, let me walk through this because this is the actual application of everything we've talked about.
Please do.
The 3R protocol stands for regulate, relate, and reason. And the order is non-negotiable.
That's the most important part. Non-negotiable.
You cannot start with reason, the top floor, because the child physically isn't there yet. First, you have to regulate. You focus purely on calming the nervous system.
Deep breaths. Lowering your posture to their eye level.
Softening your voice. You soothe that basement-level survival brain first.
You are literally turning off the biological fire alarm.
Once the alarm is off, you move to the second floor.
Yeah.
You relate. And this is where Gottman's emotional validation comes in.
Right, I see you're upset.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You connect with them emotionally. You don't try to fix the problem yet. You just validate the feeling.
And only after those two steps have successfully lowered the child's physiological stress do you finally move to the third step.
Reason.
Yes. Now you are on the top floor and you can discuss what happened, why the behavior was wrong, or what the logical consequence is. Regulate, relate, reason.
And going through that specific sequence is what creates something called a co-regulation loop.
Exactly. A child's immature nervous system actually learns how to calm down by physically syncing up with a calm adult nervous system. It's a shared biological process.
That's incredible.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the SDJ kit doesn't just give a parent a psychological trick to stop a tantrum. The kit actually teaches the parent how to offer their own mature nervous system to the child as a temporary bridge.
It fundamentally changes the relationships.
Yeah.
You aren't managing behavior. You are managing biology.
Precisely.
It brings to mind an incredibly poignant quote from the sources, from Smar Dejarok, the editorial director of SDJ Production. The quote is, "Emotion is not a noise to be silenced. It's a song to orchestrate."
Wow. That perfectly encapsulates the shift from adversarial parenting to collaborative neurobiology.
It really does. Without these tools, parents are forced to act as soundproofers. Your only goal is to desperately mute the noise, to stop the crying so you don't feel embarrassed in public.
Yeah, just shoving the emotion away.
But this kit is designed to turn parents into conductors. You aren't silencing the song. You're providing the tempo and the rhythm to help the child find their own melody. You're helping them process the emotion rather than forcing them to stuff it down into the basement.
But becoming a conductor requires training, right? It requires an understanding of the music, and it requires accessible tools.
Which is a massive roadblock. I mean, if the 3R protocol and co-regulation are so vital to human development, why isn't every parent using them?
Well, the problem isn't a lack of parental desire.
Right, the roadblock is a massive financial and academic paywall. High-quality psychological resources, especially those rooted in the clinical research of Gottman and Siegel, they're usually locked inside expensive therapy sessions.
Or pricey seminars, dense academic texts.
Exactly. Which brings us to the actual mechanics and urgency of the SDJ crowdfunding campaign.
Right. They have structured this campaign with a very specific timeline.
It's an all-or-nothing model, and they have exactly 30 days to hit their target. And the financial goal they've set is 200,000 FCFA.
It is the Central African CFA franc.
Right. So what does this all mean in practical terms? To give you some context, 200,000 FCFA translates to roughly 300 to 350 US dollars or euros.
Which is pretty small by Western standards.
Yeah. In Western terms, an institutional fundraising goal of $350 sounds incredibly modest. It sounds almost tiny. But in the local context of Central Africa, this is a highly impactful grassroots target.
Definitely.
So where is that money actually going if they hit that goal in the 30-day window?
Well, the sources outline a very clear allocation of those funds. A portion of it is purely operational. It goes to finalizing the graphic editing of the guides to ensure the emotional blueprint is visually intuitive.
Sure, standard production stuff.
Right, and it funds the production of new educational video capsules. But the real engine driving this campaign is democratization.
Okay.
The funds are explicitly earmarked to bypass that traditional therapy paywall and make these resources accessible to low-income families.
They are trying to ensure that a stressed parent on a Tuesday morning can access the exact same level of psychological insight as someone paying hundreds of dollars an hour for a clinical psychologist.
Exactly. But they are taking it a step further. This raises an important question, right? How do you make Western psychological concepts truly accessible in a non-Western context?
Oh, that's a huge challenge.
This is perhaps the most ambitious and vital part of the entire SDJ project. They are using these funds to translate these tools into local Cameroonian languages.
That is a staggering undertaking, because translating complex psychology isn't just about swapping out vocabulary words.
No, not at all. It is a profound exercise in cultural resonance. We are talking about taking deeply complex Western neuroscience, the intricacies of polyvagal theory and the 3R protocol, and adapting them for local African contexts.
You almost never see developmental psychology localized to this specific degree.
Right, because the concept of co-regulation in a highly individualistic Western society might look fundamentally different in a highly community-oriented African culture.
Oh, absolutely. You have to ensure that the idea of a parent emotionally validating a child actually makes sense within the local dialect and cultural norms.
Yeah. You have to ensure that the song to orchestrate actually resonates with the lived realities of the families using the kit.
Exactly.
They are taking universal neurobiological truths about how the human brain develops, and they're ensuring the delivery mechanism for those truths is linguistically native and culturally appropriate.
Which is just so cool.
That is how you bridge the global accessibility gap.
Mm.
You don't just hand someone a translated textbook, you embed the science into their cultural framework.
It is such a brilliant, targeted goal for a 200,000 FCFA campaign. And it brings us back to the overarching message for you, the listener, as we wrap up today's deep dive.
Yeah.
The sources make it very clear in their closing materials. By supporting a grassroots campaign like this, you aren't just financing a few PDFs and MP4s.
No.
You aren't just paying for graphic design or server space.
Mm.
You are literally investing in the emotional intelligence of an entire generation. You are giving families the tools to build sturdy staircases in their children's brains.
Mm.
And whether you are a parent, currently deep in the trenches, a caregiver, a teacher, or honestly, just someone who interacts with other human beings on a daily basis.
Which is all of us.
Right. Understanding this fundamental biological shift changes everything. Knowing that difficult, frustrating, irrational behavior is usually just the clumsy language of a developing brain.
A brain looking for a staircase that hasn't been built yet.
Yes. It completely alters how you navigate the world.
Yeah.
It replaces your frustration with profound empathy.
It replaces reaction with intervention, but it also demands something heavy from us as the adults in the room.
What do you mean?
Well, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the science we've explored today.
Okay.
Earlier, we talked about the necessity of the co-regulation loop, the idea that a child's nervous system relies entirely on our calm to organize itself.
Right.
The sources also reference Edward Tronick's famous still face experiment.
Oh man, that's the psychological experiment where a caregiver is interacting playfully with an infant and then suddenly stops, maintaining a completely blank, emotionless, still face.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yes, and the results are agonizing to watch. The infant tries everything, pointing, babbling, reaching out to get a reaction.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is. When the caregiver remains completely blank, the child's nervous system panics. They dysregulate entirely and begin to cry helplessly. The child relies on the adult's facial expressions and emotional responsiveness for their own biological stability.
And they need us to actively lend them our top floor so they know they are safe.
Exactly. But if we pull back and look at our modern reality, what happens when we, the adults, are simply too burnt out to provide that active co-regulation?
Yeah.
What happens when financial stress, systemic exhaustion, or just the relentless chaos of modern life leaves us totally hollowed out?
Yeah.
Are we, as a chronically stressed out society, inadvertently giving our kids the still face because we physically and emotionally lack the energy to orchestrate their song?
Oh, wow. That is an incredibly confronting question, because if you are exhausted, your own face goes blank. Your own response is shortened.
Yeah.
You end up in your own biological basement.
It's a profound reminder. Building a child's emotional intelligence, giving them the tools to safely navigate their own three-story brain, requires us to fiercely protect and maintain our own emotional intelligence first.
Yeah, you cannot lend someone your top floor if you yourself are barricaded in the basement.
Exactly. You cannot be a conductor if you've lost the ability to hear the music yourself.
It turns out the first step to helping a child through a meltdown isn't figuring out how to fix their brain. It's taking a deep breath and regulating your own.
The intervention always starts with you.
Well, that is definitely something to keep in mind the next time you find yourself staring down a meltdown in the cereal aisle. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the SDJ production campaign, and we'll see you next time.